Friends, family, and cohorts, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Fight or Flight podcast. Today, I'm joined by Phil Otto, designer, thinker, and cultural cartographer whose work has left his fingerprints across some of the most defining brands, spaces, and subcultures of the past 2 decades. Phil's capacity to create goes beyond just design. In my opinion, he decodes the essence of what's happening. With the precision of a cultural anthropologist and the vision of a futurist, he captures the social undercurrents that shape how we live, how we move, how we buy, and in my opinion, how we belong to a community. From tier zero retail to architecture, street culture, and digital expression, his fingerprints are everywhere, humbly, subtly, but powerfully. I first met Phil in 2004 when I commissioned Otto Design Group to rethink a modular POS system, a Lego-like exhibition concept for our highest tier retail doors. What he returned with wasn't just a display, it was a philosophy in blueprint form. He saw retail not as shelving, but as a ritual. That clarity and discipline made an indelible mark on me. Through his design studios, both the Otto Design Group and SNG GRP, Phil continues to explore the intersection of culture, community, and positive impact. His teams design with utility and beauty. They map context before making moves, and they show a rare discipline in aligning brand, user, and purpose. So let's dive into it. Phil, it's great to have you. I appreciate you joining me today.
Yeah, good to be here this morning. Thanks, Miles.
My pleasure. Phil, I just want to dive right into it. In my opinion, you view the world differently than most, and I count that as both a gift and maybe a burden. In your opinion, what is great design and what makes something beloved, whether it's digital, physical, or printed?
Absolutely. Retail's evolving, obviously. There's a lot of discussion around that. It's very much an omni-channel experience now, where you want each piece of it to do what it does well. And we always start with that. Like, I love that you said, referencing our project together, that it starts with a philosophy. My training, my background, I wrote a paper as a young lad in high school about the Native American reservation near where I grew up and my love of the Northwest carving tradition. And that was part of, you know, how I engaged with Stanford. And that's my training. I'm a cultural anthropologist by training. After college, I started working with friends on spaces, loft parties. I was in the Seattle scene. I had bands pre-Nirvana, and really valued that and realized that I was always designing from a cultural perspective. And I didn't think that cultural anthropology would equate to design. I didn't even make that leap. It just happened. And I realized everything we do is culturally based. So to start with a philosophy is key, whether we're being a futurist for Amazon, which we just completed recently, or whether we're designing a new brick and mortar space for a digital brand that's making that transition. Those are some of our active projects right now. But at the basis of it is always who's the audience, who's the end user, what's the experience, and with a space we want it to be brand immersion. With an online experience, we want it to tell great stories, and then the omni-channel aspect that we always want to keep an eye on is then those stories should align seamlessly with that experience you have when you go to the brand immersion, when you go to the space.
Phil, who's doing it well today? Because I hear from so many of my friends that retail is vanilla, it's redundant, it lacks
Mm.
the experience and the excitement of the old Benetton ads from the 80s or the Nike towns when they first opened, or for that matter, your work with Anthropologie when you brought forward an expression that we had never seen before with the way the wood came together and the reclaimed and recycled materials long before it was in vogue. I don't
Mm.
see it anymore. Am I blind or is
Mm.
this what's happening?
Oh, no, it's just become more specific. You look at something like Gentle Monster coming in from Korea. They're devoting a huge amount of their brick and mortar footprint to robotics that are just engaging, and they get a lot of selfie trap moments, right, where people come just to. I was talking to Simon about that. They represent a lot of that rollout, And they're saying there's so much tourist traffic, people just want to be seen in the store taking a photo, that it's almost an impediment to the transaction. I don't see it that way at all. The transaction may happen on those four walls. It may happen online after the fact. It may happen before you even go to the space, and then you go there just to get that photo. All these things are good. We embrace all that. It feels like quicksand, and like you say, there are people who are trying to figure out retail that maybe don't get that. But if you focus on purpose and experience and an omni-channel statement, you have nothing to fear.
Well, to follow that up, my experience in business is that everyone's so focused on the return on the investment and the transaction. We have to quantify what the investment in the creative arts is worth. And so, not every executive is willing to take the journey that a transaction could be a selfie moment that could be more valuable than the actual cash register because of the number of customers they're going to attract. So, how do you address that and that universal emotion that you're talking about that many financial people don't value or seem not to value?
It is the task then of those of us in design to make that clear, to make that explicit. Very possible to do that, but you do have to get into an omni-channel view of the world. And you've got to, with REI, we're doing the rebranding. We took them from being Recreational Equipment Incorporated. It's a brand I grew up with. I'm a Seattle kid. And I was like, REI Co-op. That's what you really are. You're the world's largest outdoor co-op, and that's what your audience wants to hear. So they went back to being REI Co-op, and at a certain point in that analysis, there was a discussion of why even do stores if we're the number one online retailer. And basically, anytime they opened a store, though, when we did the analysis, then the online sales spiked in that zip code. So in some ways, it freed us up on the design side to say it is brand immersion. It's that community room that's in every store. There's that local concierge guide to what's local and exciting. Nature is everywhere. Nature is near. So the stores are really a forum for that. And you look at your air mattresses online. You go there to experience one. Those are the stories. But the fact is, if you look at it as an omni-channel move, the store experience drives online sales. If you take that position and you're purpose driven, guess what? The in-store sales spike too. So that's a good example of how maybe clients can think about it and look for those stories, and that will help them understand what they're getting for their investment.
With that worldview, purpose driven, and moving online, how, as a cultural anthropologist, do you see the future?
Yeah, we always start with who's the end user, right? What's the user experience? And if you focus on that, the user experience is a cycle. Undoubtedly, you're going to have this amazing device in your pocket that can research anything. So you probably have looked at the store, you've thought about the store, you've thought about whether you should go there, and maybe even know what you're intending to buy. Maybe you already bought it and you still just want to go see, physicality of that brand, what it's like to be immersed in it. I have a friend who does the Gentle Monster rollout, but that's a brand that's really committed to giving up a lot of their real estate to robotics that are just saying something about the brand, their commitment to the arts, their interest in futurism, their interest in creating a memorable moment you want to tell your friends about. That gets you to the word of the mouth. That gets you to the emotional connection. And this is not new. Why is Apple different than the other tech brands? Because they have a philosophy. That philosophy is expressed in everything from the store to the unpackaging experience. They do it well. There's a cultural anthropologist at the brand development level, Phil Knight, another fellow anthropologist out there messing with the culture. Well, he focused on Nike in a specific way. We all know the story of it being like a brand first, it being a lifestyle first, and then yeah, it's great tech, great research, great style. But fundamentally, you're first saying, I love Nike. You have an emotional connection.
You bring up the word robotics in the terms of Gentle Monster. We're talking about Phil
Mhm.
Knight and influencing culture. How do you understand systems that inform that creativity, i.e., robotics or AI? And how is
Mhm.
that challenging your understanding of culture and culture that's going to influence creativity?
I love that question, Miles. Did photography end art?
No.
No, it just became another aspect of art. And then you realize the tactility of physical painting became a different thing. It became, the New York abstract school. really flourished because photography freed them up from having to do representation. That's a very boiled down version, but you
Ooh,
get it.
yeah,
Did the laptop studio destroy music, or did it lead to Phineas producing and Billie Eilish, his sister, singing? Um,
very cool.
it, it's just a tool. Did a table saw end carpentry, or did it just make you be able to do more with carpentry? All these things are just tools. AI won't replace creativity. People who really know how to get the most out of AI, who know how to drive those programs, yeah, that you should be worried about those people.
Yeah, well, hold up.
The
Quick
people
question. So
driving.
AI democratizes the
Yeah,
practitioner's work.
exactly.
So if you're the expert and you spent years studying and perfecting your craft, and all of a sudden I can drop a prompt in a good prompt and render a high resolution output, schematic,
Hmm.
graphic, how does that not threaten the very trade? And I really appreciate the painting photography analogy, right? I'm visualizing it, but I'm looking at AI. I got friends that do graphics for a living, and they have clients saying, well, we don't need you to do any typography for us anymore because we're generating our own in house.
I love Rick Rubin's recent
Oh,
book. He gets at that. It's still, do you have a good idea? It becomes the game of ideas. Brian Eno talks about the studio culture, in electronic music, basically making musicians in the same place painters are in the studio. It's not the technique that's a problem. That's accessible to everyone. It's a game, a battle of ideas. I welcome that. I love that. I think anyone who has a good idea should get it out there. We're all creative people. We actually, I think Picasso said it. We're all born creative. It's just how do you nurture that inner child over time? And not everyone can do that, and that can create some sense of it being a privileged thing. On the other hand, like you say, it's the democratization. Why not have everyone be a creator? Why not have everyone get into this battle of good ideas?
amazing battle of ideas. The competitive creative. I love that concept. I see the gladiator coming out of this, but it then, Philip, begs the question: outside of yourself and maybe Design Army in DC and just a couple other ones, why are most design studios, they seem to be playing it safe? They're holding people back from expressing boldly. I remember the Benetton photography ads that were so controversial but expressive, or
Hmm.
Nike or Anthropologie that you helped build. They were
Hmm.
a unique perspective and a reflection of what we were experiencing as a community. And I don't find that today. Is that a fair assessment?
No, I think it's happening. If you look at, I have some really good friends, and we've collaborated with Rios a lot. Rios has expanded beyond the LA scene. They're now a national player. I have a little farm in Ohio right now, and they're doing the master plan for the Over the Rhine region, supporting the new soccer stadium. So there are people doing it. Or what do you do with Bjarke Engels and Big? They're playing the game of
Right.
ideas. The technique is not really new. They do great. Technically they're awesome, but what's fun about it is the Lego museum looks like it's built out of Legos.
Right.
You know, their projects. It's the poetry, it's the narrative that sticks in your head, and then it becomes an experience you want to visit. You can't really do architecture online. You can allude to it, but to feel architecture, there is that sense of awe. I walked the vessel the other day, a Heatherwick's project in New York. Wonderful. There's no reason to do that in a way, except to create a memorable destination that really activates that whole region. It connects to the High Line. There's a retail experience at the base of it that's wonderful. So yeah, everything's happening. It's just it looks different, and so you have to wonder how do these cultural changes affect the way I approach things.
Phil, in the scheme of ideas and the poetry that you're speaking of, this narrative that's coming forward, what is the litmus test for authenticity now? And how do you know when something is real that you're experiencing?
Mm. Well, now we're getting very philosophical,
Yes.
definitions of reality. I like to go way back. There's the guy who's sort of the inventor of modern history and analysis as we know it, Thucydides. So, if there's some Greek who said it, then it's very
That's cool.
important. So Thucydides said the very common sense, very grounding statement, the only constant throughout history is human nature. So if you study human nature and how to connect with that, you'll always be fine. And that's what it all comes down to. That's what we're doing now. We're in the midst of a huge revolution. We've all heard about the Industrial Revolution. whether you call this the information age or I don't know, you can give it whatever tagline you want. But in anthropology, we look at these moments like creates cultural dissonance. Like, in some ways, everything's up for grabs, and that's the sense you're talking about, Miles. Cultural dissonance. So in the information age, we're now overwhelmed by information. We're bombarded in a way never before. So then new skills, are going to have to emerge, and it'll take a while. How do you filter? How do you consider the source? How do you align to things that matter to you and tune out the noise that distracts you from getting done what you need to get done? Think about the Industrial Revolution when within 6 months, the whole horse business and all the things that catered to horses were
Yes,
gone, replaced with 6 months. And
I didn't
that's
realize it was that fast.
that's a fast timeline in the past. So our timelines now feel faster, but
Feel faster.
that's pretty quick. 6 months, everything
Yeah.
changed,
Could you
right?
imagine being a saddle maker at that time?
Exactly. Yeah, you have the stable, the saddle maker. I make carriages. I mean, it all shifted to cars within six
And I
months.
look at Hermes, they're thriving, but they started as a saddle maker. But then I look at retail and I see the number of outlets shrinking. And so the opportunity to sell changing so dramatically that it gives me a moment to pause. Is great product getting out there, or people just chasing the transaction?
Yeah, I love looking at history, and I also like looking at science fiction. I think both things are good filters, and as an anthropologist, of course, I'm attracted to that. But I was reading where Louis Vuitton was this homeless teenager
Oh, I didn't know that.
who just started doing stuff, and he got a storefront, and he started doing more stuff,
Come on, are you
and that's
serious?
yeah, homeless teenager. How did he feel? If you ask him these questions, what's he going to say? And I'm sure there was some desperation. There was some imminent need to get things done, and obviously that created a huge amount of drive for him. But that's what I want to read more about. I've just touched the surface on that, so I don't have much to say except I feel that trajectory is really important. I started out in the DIY punk rock moment. That's why a lot of things you're saying look different. With anthropology, I was part of the initial team, and there are wonderful creative people involved in that, particularly Sue Ratter. But looking at art school people rather than fashion design school people
Yes,
to do things. So that
that's
there's a
remarkable.
book by Rizzoli now, The Art of Anthropology, which is really about recruiting art school people rather than the typical fashion people that were the usual go-to for retail, right?
That's bold, and that's a level of courage and vision of the future to step outside of what you normally do and bring forward a different way of thinking. But I'm convinced there's a book here for you to write called The Game of Ideas. And that is your
Okay,
calling. You need to drop that
there you
knowledge
go.
on the world. Phil, I go down the list of brands you've touched. Ron Herman, Nike, Starbucks, REI Co op, Urban Outfitters, Free People, North Face, Quicksilver, Citizens of Humanity, and I can keep driving the list. It's so impressive. Owning an agency that services that level of clientele, big, small, emerging, is never for the faint of the heart. What have been your hardest lessons about maintaining excellence, making payroll, and producing exceptional work?
Great question. It's a challenge. I've made a choice, and I've consulted and been a part of some large architectural firms. Ozzie Nelson's a good friend. I worked with Nelson as a bit of a disruptor for a couple of years. Worked with Callison when they were in the transition to become what is now Arcadis. I've worked more recently with KTGY Architects in LA and still have a relationship with them. Their depth is in housing, but they're getting very much into placemaking, which is my passion now. I got to admit, but it's a choice. I've seen the big firm model, and I've been a manager in those kinds of systems, and I know it well. And I've chosen to remain a small agency through it all because we want to be nimble. We don't want to be just tied to making payroll. I have to admit, when I have scaled up a couple of times, you end up saying yes to some things that maybe aren't your focus just because you have to drive that machine. So I've intentionally avoided that, where I'd rather stay small. We definitely gone the gig economy route, and I'd say it's evolved. I think we need a new name. I often say we have an international network of top tier talent, and we put together the team based on the conversation with the client on what is the purpose, what is the need. We're not selling a package that we already have done for other people ever. To the point where I don't even carry any graphic designers in house because we see that as artists and and a voice we want to tailor to each occasion. And we know amazing artists. My business partner is good friends with Cause, for example, or Jeff McFetrich is someone we brought into that. We have amazing people we can bring in, but I don't want that look on every project. I want to think of who's the photographer for the photo shoot that we love, based on the story we're telling. So I think if you take what you said initially, Miles, we start with a philosophy, and then we start to think of what's the narrative, and how do we connect well with the audience. You start to know what you need to do. But like I say, the international team of talent is is
It's
the way we've gone to stay away from just feeding the machine.
That's remarkable. Keeps the gene pool healthy, keeps creative conflict happening regularly just because of time zones, different orientations, culture. It's great. Along those lines, you said yes to drive the machine in the past. On the flip side, have you ever turned down a project you wish you hadn't or taken one that you regretted deeply?
No, because of the approach, we choose the client as much as they choose us. So
Very
I don't
cool.
think I've ever chosen anything that wasn't a worthy battle. Some of them, I have outcomes I'm more happy with, more proud of. But I'll admit I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and that drives me. And I think it gets into the level of quality we produce. But I suppose it also results in me, everything could always be better.
That's awesome.
I always look at the end result and I'm like, well, it's a percentage of what we were trying to do. Yeah, yeah. Let's keep going. Let's refine it further, right?
You can edit to amplify always, but there's a point where you got to deliver as well, where you could keep,
Oh yeah, yeah,
someone died and the Sistine Chapel wasn't finished yet, right? So I
yeah,
can
yeah.
appreciate that. Phil, your greatest fear as a creative leader that nobody sees? What keeps you up? What keeps you worried?
I guess it is sort of the David Bowie thing. You got to be constantly reinventing, and I feel like I've had so many distinct careers. I had that, part of that sub pop culture out of Seattle. That was my initial sort of national breakthrough. But then that typecast, I had a moment where people were like, "Oh, Kurt Cobain's dead. It's over. What are you gonna do now?" And I'm like, wait, no,
Right.
I have other things to say, and that's not me. You're pigeonholing me. So I had to reinvent at that point, and then currently I want to get into scale. I'm really loving what we're doing with placemaking, which like we have a project in the Arts District for Carmel Partners called Alloy. And my good friend and partner Christian Strike, who did the Beautiful Losers show that really put street art on the map, he's been driving the programming for that. And we did the branding, we did the naming, we did the placemaking to set the stage. Obviously, WPA Architects did the building, Rios did the landscape design. We had amazing partners, but our piece of it was really what's the philosophy for the retail paseo, and part of that was saying if you just go with ROI and you just go with who signed a lease, then you're going to have a period of vacancy when you open, which is a bad look. And why not during construction start to be talking about all these events and experiences that are going to happen? And so that's what we did. We've created a series of art exhibitions using the free rent. We're just saying, look, like
So
creatives
cool.
want to show up and do things. You want to activate and energize and tell a great story
Yes.
to sell, leases. There is a sweet spot there where you're kind of saying, yeah, hey, we've got free rent. Show up for a month, do something incredible, and then we're going to lease it to someone, permanently after that. For the desire, obviously, of the developers is send a 10-year lease with a national credit tenant, of course. But why not show the potential of that space? Why not create the interest and activity? Start telling the story to attract those tenants, and that's working really well. And we're starting to build on that with other clients as well.
Amazing. I'd like to rewind for just a second. You spoke about your reinvention and your multiple careers. I see
Uh-huh.
the commonality in all of them, so I don't consider them a complete reinvention, maybe an evolution, but the
Okay.
semantics there. There are a lot of I have a lot of friends and colleagues that are at a pivotal point. Designers at athletic footwear brands, optic brands, they've been laid off. They're struggling to reinvent themselves or finding that next purpose, as we discussed in this
Hmm.
economy, particularly. What experiences and what exercises or mental models did you practice that help guide you through those moments that you could share that may be beneficial?
Yeah. You're always listening to the audience, but if you're a design firm, your audience is also your client. So we want to think, what challenges are our clients facing? How can we help? And that's, again, the story I just told. There's a need to activate and create a sense of what it could be. So that's a move to do that, and that's us just listening to our clients. I don't know that I would have thought of that, except I kept seeing, we're opening and it's vacant and it just says lease a space. It's like in retail, it'd be like your sales associates rushing up to you at the door and saying, "Hey, buy this." Well, that's not attractive. That's not seductive. So, it is our job to help our clients identify the best path to achieve their goals.
Amazing. You've given me a moment to pause for a second with another question, if I may. Uh,
Okay.
You've used the word service, my language. How can we help? And is design a service industry? Because I've always looked at it as a
Ooh,
creative industry or a industry of production, not of humility and
it's both.
service. It's
Oh, it's both, Miles. It has to be. Yeah. A favorite provocation I like to bring into our process always: design is dialogue. So we can't be effective unless we're talking to the actual decision makers. So our design process, always requires that. Once decision makers are involved, you can hear their pain points and what they need to solve. I don't know that until I get into dialogue with my clients. So yeah, I think the constant reinvention, the service industry aspect, all of those things align to design as dialogue. You're always listening to your client, and a corollary to that is design is problem solving. So once you have the dialogue and you get into the need and defining the purpose, then we have a set of tools or services, if you will, that are problem solving devices.
Can you walk us through the thought process or the onboarding that happens in a short manner, or that sort of here's the breakdown of what you would recommend?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it really starts with, who's your audience? Like I said, I always want to say it's based in the end user. We're going to create a user experience that connects the dots for that end user. We're addicted to convenience now. We're in late stage consumer capitalism, if you will. So, you
Wow.
know, we really want everything to be easy, and we select things that do that. I think it's almost a matter of, again, that information age, the overload. How do I manage that? Well, I value a curated offering. Why do people like Trader Joe's? It doesn't have everything, but there's a philosophy. You feel it's a trusted partner,
Yes.
that they've kind of vetted things, and it's a reasonable amount of choice, but it's not the choice of everything.
Right.
It's this set of things that fit the audience that they know and cater to that.
Fantastic. Phil, this has been remarkable. As we begin to close out the conversation, I'd like to pull back to a 30,000-foot view, if we could.
Sure.
If you could teach a young designer one truth that would spare them 5 years of wasted effort, what would that be?
Get to the core of why you do it. You had an impulse to get into design, and I usually tell people, if you aren't obsessed and if you don't have to do this, do something else.
Really?
My parents were doctors; they were very worried about me. It really was that. I think when I had to say, why am I not a pre med, which was my dad's push. He was like, I want my son to be a doctor like me, and I'm like, well, that's not my purpose. I have this thing I have to do. If that's not where you're starting from, I think it's going to be a hard road. I don't know. There's probably other starting points. That's just the one I know well. Start with passion and purpose. If you're obsessed with it, then you're going to enjoy the ride.
Fantastic. Phil, is there anything you haven't done yet that's still calling you? Or to that point, what's the next design fight worth waging in your world?
Well, Miles, you may have given it to me. I think,
Your
yeah,
book?
I think writing a book makes sense. I've had offers and I haven't acted on it, but I do think it has a little bit to do with empowering people. I'm most proud when people see things when we've done and then they change the way they're approaching their residential design at home. They realize they could build. I did a lot of very DIY stuff that you could go buy some pipe and flange and some plywood and go do it at home, and people did. And I would get questions like, wow, does that make you irrelevant? Does that put you out of business? I'm like, no, because we're on to the next idea. I'm glad that idea resonated. I love seeing it ripple out in the world. That's what I want to continue to do. And a book maybe on empowering people, like Picasso's thing. Everyone's creative until they learn not to be. I think everyone's a designer. It's a problem solving tools that everyone should have. I would love everyone to be a designer.
Phil, I'd love for you to put that book out. I know a small community of friends that would buy it in a second.
Okay. Well, I'll get right
Yeah,
on it.
please
Thank you.
do. Phil, thank you for showing us the clarity. Culture isn't simply a luxury, it's a responsibility. Along those lines, if any of our listeners want to get in touch with you with regards to a speaking engagement, a project, problem they're trying to solve in this space, how would you like them to go about doing that?
Yeah, reach out. We do have the website, pretty easy to remember, snggrp.work, because it's all about our work.
Great.
So if you go there, you can always get in touch with me.
And I will include that in the show notes. But this has been remarkable. I'm grateful for your time. I'm thrilled to have you in the circle. Appreciate you and what you're doing for the communities. And you're a rock star, brother. Keep on, keep on. I love it.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me,
Yeah.
Miles. This is awesome.